And I'm joined today on the show by Commander Arnab Das, founder director of the Maritime Research Center. He's one of India's foremost advocates for underwater domain awareness. My colleague Nivriti Mohan, who's been tracking Chinese spy ships which are tracking our missile tests. Commander Das, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm going to ask Commander Das this. Commander Das, you've been part of the documentary that Nivriti put together. The fact that the Chinese seem to be snooping on all three dimensions of the Indian Ocean, whether it's the seabed, the water, the surface of the sea, and the atmosphere when they're tracking our missile tests. Give us a breakdown of the entire Chinese expeditions over the last 6 years, which have intensified.
It's a very important question, and it's a very important dimension. See, if you look at today, Indo-Pacific strategic space is being talked about as the most critical area of engagement, right? I mean, there was a time when the Pacific and the Atlantic was important, but today, in the 21st century, it's the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
But in the Indo-Pacific also, the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific becomes far more important because India and China will interact here. There have been a lot of effort to understand the Pacific part of the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
And there have been experiments like the Asia X that happened at the beginning of this century. There's a lot of data that is available there or that has been generated at a certain point. But Indian Ocean or the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific is far less known.
Right.
So now there is an aggressive push by the Chinese to understand the Indian Ocean much better.
Right.
So on all the three dimensions, as you mentioned, they are trying to gather more information and they're trying to understand this region better. Now, even for whether it is for military or even for the deep ocean mission or the blue economy, if they have to deploy, I mean, I would like to say that 90% of the resources and the challenges exist below the surface of the water.
Right, absolutely.
So, having said that, now you need to deploy your platforms, whether it is an AUV or whatever you need to deploy there.
Right.
That requires a very different kind of underwater domain awareness. Right. I mean, I would like to also mention that USS Connecticut met with an accident in the South China Sea.
Yes.
See, latest submarine or, such a state-of-the-art submarine of the US Navy meets with such an embarrassment for but it also brings out, the lack of UDA in this part of the world.
No, absolutely. Very important point there, Commander Das. The fact that, underwater domain awareness is so critical to submarine operations, and the fact that the USS Connecticut hit an underwater object which it wasn't aware of. So obviously they hadn't mapped that part of the South China Sea. But, Commander Das, the Chinese say that they're there for scientific purposes. Many of their vessels are not pure scientific they're not spy ships per se, but they seem to be for oceanographic data, they're hydrographic ships and all. But this trust deficit that not just India, but the world has with China, how is that trust deficit fueling our suspicion of the kind of activities that they are engaged in the IOR? Break this point down for us.
See, any underwater data or any data, it's a strategic asset for any nation.
Right.
I mean, West has done it in the past, they have mapped the areas of interest and, once that data comes in, like, let us say Indian Ocean, like you mentioned about 24 expeditions by China.
Yes.
Now, they were doing this underwater expeditions to map the, the undersea to be able to deploy AUVs and, any such platforms.
Right.
Now, once that data is available to you, whether you are carrying out a mission for security or for blue economy, that is your national.
Absolutely.
But that data is the start point, right?
Right, absolutely. The data is the start point, it's agnostic. Yes.
Yes. So that data is very important. And that's why if you see the UDA framework that we have built, the pooling of resources and synergizing of effort is so much important.
Right.
And particularly when you talk about the global south, when there is always a resource crunch and, the political has to balance between socio-economic budget and the military budget, this will become a very, very important question. But once this data is collected and if it has got a lot of relevance for the blue economy, it makes a lot more political sense.
Right, absolutely.
So you cannot fault China on, why they're doing this. I mean, and even the UNCLOS permits you to collect
Yes,
data.
absolutely. The UNCLOS permits you to do that. So, which is what my point was on the trust deficit with China. But Commander Das, last question to you is that what must India do now? I mean, given the fact that, as you mentioned, that they are well within their rights to do whatever research they're doing. They can even snoop on our missile tests. There's nothing we can do about it. What can India really do to, let's say, deny China the intelligence advantage in the Indian Ocean region?
Simple. I mean, put boots on the ground. I mean, you have to do as much more capacity building,
Right.
as much more data collection. You know, see, it's a war of capabilities.
Yes.
If you are better capable, then, you know, it itself becomes a deterrence.
Right.
If your adversary knows that you are better prepared or you are better capable, then that itself becomes a deterrent. You don't have to, see, war should not be fought.
Right.
It should be avoided with better preparedness. I mean, that's
Right.
what it is.
Right, a war of capabilities, a war of preparedness. Thanks very much, Commander Das and Nivriti, for your views on Xi Jinping's spy ships.